Joining us now, Lieutenant Governor, Virginia, Democrat Justin Fairfax. Justin Fairfax. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, great to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Hey, John. God bless you and everybody listening. Thanks so much for having me on.
You got it, Justin. Hey, let's start with your decision. We had a lot to talk about today. Let's start with your decision to attend the Virginia's 400-year commemorative events honoring what you said are enslaved Africans in our democracy. And you said you're going whether President Trump comes or not, counter to the Democratic caucuses in both the state Senate and the House of Delegates, both Eileen Filler-Corn and Dick Zaslow, their respective leaders, putting out statements saying if Trump goes, they're not coming. You basically saying you're going to commemorate this regardless. Why?
That's correct, John. And as you know, I laid out my reasons for attending and commemorating this really momentous historic occasion, again, honoring enslaved Africans who were brought here to the Commonwealth of Virginia, Hampton and Point Comfort 400 years ago in 1619, and obviously honoring our democracy, our General Assembly, the House of Burgesses' first meeting that same year in 1619. And I think this has got to be bigger than politics. I think that, much of what we do has got to be bigger than politics. And as you know, John, there's also a very personal connection for me. My great-great-great-grandfather, Simon Fairfax, was enslaved here in Virginia and was freed by the Ninth Lord Fairfax on June the 5th, 1798, so 221 years ago. And that's a really, powerful and incredible journey and testament to who we can be as Americans when we are at our best, when we rise to the better angels of our nature. And to have Simon Fairfax's great-great-great-grandson now 221 years later serving as lieutenant governor of the same state in which he had been enslaved, I think is really an inspirational message and one that I definitely want to bring to the commemoration events coming up here next week.
Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, what do you say then to your Democratic leaders in the caucus, Dick Zaslow, his team, and Eileen Filler-Corn and her caucus, all of them saying they're not going to go? What do you say to them?
Well, John, here's the thing. I think we got to speak to Virginians, right? There are 8.5 million Virginians that we all represent, and I'm very proud and honored to represent them as their lieutenant governor. As you know, I was elected in November 2017 with the most votes ever in the history of Virginia for lieutenant governor, 1.36 million votes. And so they placed their, trust and faith in me to represent them and do, on behalf of all Virginians what we, aspire to do. And so I really am talking to all 8.5 million Virginians. And ultimately, I think we're talking to the country and to the world about who we are. And in the place where Western democracy was born, we have an opportunity now, 400 years later, to rebirth it, to say that we're going to not repeat the mistakes of the past. We're not going to go down the dark road of racism and racial oppression and hatred and, stopping people from having equality of laws and due process and all the things that, we look back on history and say we don't want to replicate those things, but instead we want to take the best of what we have been and who we are and who we can be and have that be what the next 400 years looks like. So I'm really speaking to all 8.5 million Virginians, to all Americans, and ultimately to people around the world about who we are, and we are great when we adhere to our highest values.
Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, Ralph Northam, the Democratic governor, is the one who invited President Trump to this historic event, 400 years, sent him a letter, and then sent him a follow-up letter asking him to come, and now his own caucus abandoning it. I mean, is there a sense of hypocrisy or what? I mean, it's hard for the layman to understand. The governor invites the president, he's a Democrat, and then members of your own party who you serve with aren't going. How does that work?
Again, John, this to me has got to be, bigger than politics. And frankly, whoever the president, may be. And of course, as you know, I disagree vehemently with this president. I think he has, done some really, awful things. And particularly in the last, a couple of weeks, we've gotten a reminder of some of the very bigoted, and racist rhetoric and things that he's engaged in, attacking 4 congresswomen of color and telling them to go back to where they came from, although all 4, of course, are U.S. citizens, 3 of them born here, 1 naturalized. And that's not who we are. We're at our best. And I have friends who are Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and some who are just completely fed up with politics altogether because of what they're seeing going on. And they reject that kind of bigoted, racism and nonsense. But they also reject us making everything about politics. They care about their families, their future, their children, their grandchildren, and that's really what we've got to focus on. How do people get a chance to thrive? How do they get economic opportunity? How can they achieve their God-given potential and their dreams? And so that's my sort of North Star. It's what I think about every single day. And I frankly just don't get caught up in the silly back and forth of politics. There are some people who wake up every single day thinking about how to tear other people down. And that's unfortunately a feature of our politics. That's not my DNA. That's not my upbringing. That's not my makeup. What I've always done is to really focus on how can you help someone else rise and achieve their dreams. And that's, frankly, where I am. And I think that's a message that hopefully will inspire a lot of people to, adhere to a better, source of, why they're in politics, why they are in public life, and why they want to help people rise rather than want to tear people down.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Truck the Truth Across America. I'm with Lieutenant Governor of Virginia Democrat Justin Fairfax. Okay, let's get to Justin Fairfax. As you know, I've been a defender of you on the radio since day one. I believe, as I believed for Judge Kavanaugh, that you deserve fair and due process. Do you think you've received that, Justin, with the allegations that have gone on in this process so far?
Well, John, first of all, I think every American deserves a fair and due process. And, and Virginians are incredibly smart. I mean, I have been so inspired by the response that we've gotten from people. I mean, people see through lies, they see through fabrications, and they see through, smear campaigns and wanting to tear people down. I mean, I've been, completely transparent and honest and forthright this entire time. I've, called for an investigation now from day one, from, the start of this. And it's no coincidence. I mean, people understand that it was only the moment that it was speculated widely that I might become governor, given all the controversy in February, that these, really specious and unfair and false allegations were made. I'm 40 years old. I lived 40 years accusation-free, and Virginians are smart. I mean, they get it. They understand the timing. They understand the circumstances. They understand that this is the rare, if not the only case, where you have seen someone who has been accused of something being the one demanding an investigation, calling the prosecutors, contacting them publicly, saying, please investigate this, because if you investigate it, I will be exonerated. And so I'll insist on due process. I'm an attorney. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I think people understand that, I'm someone who, frankly, can defend myself and can get to the truth. And really, though, what it highlights is those who are behind, this smear campaign. It's really a cynical and sad effort. I have people in my own family who are actual survivors of sexual assault who have, spoken out publicly and said this is shameful to try to weaponize these kinds of false allegations. But we've hit kind of a turning point, John. I think that people have grown really tired and really cynical. This kind of sneak attack, smear politics, and I've stood up firmly in the truth and said, let's have it out publicly. But again, it's interesting that folks who are, behind and connected to the smear campaign have gotten very quiet. They operate very sneakily in the background, and I've been out publicly, and I think the public has responded very powerfully and very positively to that. Everywhere I go, people say, look, we know this is false. We know that this is meant to try to tear you down. We know who you are, and don't worry. Keep going. We got your back, and, we'll hold those folks accountable who are behind this. But, John, I got to tell you, I have an incredible family. I have great faith, and things really, are in a place where people see the truth, and truth is a powerful thing. So it really does away with all of what we've seen for the last 5 months. Again, 5 months on, if people don't want an investigation, that tells you a lot about what their motivation has been.
So let me get this straight. We're with Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Justin Fairfax. There's no investigation. Obviously, no investigation. There's been no indictment. So you don't even have an investigation. Have you passed a lie detector test, Mr. Lieutenant Governor?
John, I've actually, I passed two. And in fact, I voluntarily submitted to two examinations on my own accord, my own direction. And these lie detector tests were administered by the same polygraph examiner who's a former FBI agent that Deborah Katz, who is the lawyer for Dr. Tyson, one of the accusers, hired in the Christy Blasey Ford Brett Kavanaugh matter to test Christy Blasey Ford. So I passed both on the first try and released those publicly so people could read the reports fully. The difference is I have nothing to hide, John. And as the facts have come out, every single day, people have come to understand, more clearly that this was a smear campaign from day one. What person who has committed, what has been alleged would contact prosecutors in two different jurisdictions multiple times publicly and say, we want you to investigate. Whereas the others will say, well, we don't want an investigation. We want a public hearing in the General Assembly. I mean, it's become a silly political game to people. And again, it's sad because there actually are survivors of sexual assault, in Virginia, in America, in my own family, who some of whom have come to me and said, I would never go on national television and run a months-long smear campaign to, accuse someone of something with no evidence and really in a baseless way, and then run and hide when it's time for an investigation to determine whether or not these things are true. And we've also seen complete falsehoods and fabrications come out, in the course of this, and no answers as to why those fabrications and falsehoods, came out. And so, look, we will hold people accountable, I assure you. And the public totally understands what this is all about. And I've been traveling all around the Commonwealth of Virginia. I was in Hampton Roads and Petersburg, Central Virginia. Afterwards, I'll be in Southwest Virginia coming up here soon. And, of course, we're up in Northern Virginia. And everywhere we go, people, are very smart. They get it. They get it, John. They see right through this. So I've been able to operate, publicly and very much in the truth, as I said, from day one. And it's interesting, John, you ask people a couple questions. What if you were accused of something with no evidence and it was baseless and you knew it was false? How would you react? A lot of people don't want to answer that question, right? And what we try to do is answer that question by saying we're going to be truthful and transparent and honest. And the other question people don't want to entertain is, what if these allegations actually are false? Right? You ask them that question. What if these are false? And what if this was a smear campaign? How do you react to that point? A lot of people don't even want to entertain that question. So, we have got to get back to a place where the truth prevails. There is due process for everyone. And I'm very confident. Again, I am someone who actually has the ability and means, resources to defend myself, to get to the truth, and to hold people accountable. But what about the average Virginian? If someone faces a false accusation, we talk about criminal justice reform in this country. If we operate in a space where people can simply be accused based on no evidence and their lives, livelihoods, families be negatively impacted by that. We're not adhering to the things that we're trying to celebrate next week with the 400-year commemoration of a representative democracy. We put safeguards in place in this country in order to have a better society, in order to have equal protection of the law, due process, and to have people be able to pursue their lives and build their families and their dreams. So I'm very confident. In many ways, we represent, what is possible in this nation when people adhere to their highest ideals. And so, John, I'm very inspired. I'm very much motivated to continue my work as Lieutenant Governor, to reach out to Virginians all across the Commonwealth of Virginia and to help them to achieve their dreams. And so we won't be deterred by smears and false allegations. And in fact, it's motivating us even more.
There's been no investigation. This is what I'm driving at here, what I'm just want to make clear to our listeners and our audience, Lieutenant Governor Fairfax. Your lawyer contacted, as you said, both the prosecutor in Durham, North Carolina, and the prosecutor in Boston, and said go ahead and initiate an investigation before the statute of limitations, especially in Massachusetts, runs out. Have you heard from either?
We've heard virtually nothing from North Carolina, aside from what we've read in press reports that they've received, our letters and our requests for investigation. But other than that, we've heard virtually nothing, despite repeated outreach. And in Boston, we have heard, back intermittently from them, but nothing terribly substantive. And again, what we have said from day one, and you've read these letters, John, because we made them public.
Right. We want an
investigation. These are serious allegations for someone to make publicly. But interestingly, it's one thing to make an allegation. It's another thing to attempt to have any kind of process to try to prove it. And I know, and the folks involved in this process know that if you investigate this, it will exonerate me, which is why they don't want an investigation and why we do. And in fact, the attorneys, in this case, the two accusers, when it came to the Brett Kavanaugh situation, actually went out of their way to publicly call for investigations in that case. They wanted law enforcement involved. They noted that it was a crime to lie to law enforcement. They wanted the FBI involved. We've said, we want the local prosecutors involved, the FBI, any investigative authorities with jurisdiction. We want them involved because we know that the investigation will exonerate me. And yet, in this case, the attorneys don't want an investigation. In fact, they try to get me to resign within the first 2 hours of them sending a letter, at least in the case of the second accuser. So people understand what this is. They see through it. And frankly, I think they're sick of it. I think they're sick and tired of the games that are being played right now. So we're in a very good place. We know what the truth is. We're driving toward the truth and holding people accountable. And we're also focusing on the things that really matter to Virginians, which are their families, their opportunities to thrive and to excel in our economy, to do well for the next generation. And again, I'm evidence that someone whose great-great-great-grandfather was enslaved here can now serve in this capacity and have the opportunities that we have in life, that America, is a place where people can thrive, again, when we adhere to our highest ideas, when we put away some of the darker aspects of our politics and rise above it.
I'm glad you're going to Jamestown. A couple other things, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax with us. I heard Joe Morrissey, soon to be in the state Senate, say on his radio show that the only way for you to recover your reputation and have a political future is to sue the women who potentially now looks like defamed you, and then also sue Mayor Stoney for conspiring with others to damage your reputation. Are you going to do that?
John, listen, I am. We're exploring all of our options, legally and otherwise, and I can assure you the folks behind this will be held accountable. And look, people see whose hands are involved in this, and then there are some other hands that will be revealed, but they're frankly tired of it. They're tired of it. I mean, again, John, imagine if someone defamed you in this way, if someone accused you of something, and then went and got silent, what would you do?
Well, here's the problem with many people, right? Many people don't have the financial resources to defend themselves against this. And this is really what my concern is. Beyond the politics of it, you get one of these accusations, and if you don't have the financial resources to defend yourself, what does an average Virginian do? I mean, they're kind of stuck. And so I just want due process here. And the fact for me from the very beginning, and I'm not in any way making any judgment on any of this. I have no idea what happened, and certainly women should be believed, as many people have said, and I'm all for that. But what has really bothered me from day one is this emanated from the LeVar Stoney camp as mayor. I mean, everybody knows that, and that politicized it, and so immediately that got my suspicions up. Do you think Stoney or his people were behind this whole thing?
Well, John, listen, it's already been publicly reported who, was involved in publicizing at least the initial, allegation. And again, you have these attorneys who are democratically connected. And the other question, John, if you haven't asked is who's paying these lawyers? Who's paying the lawyers? Who's paying for the PR behind the lawyers or PR firms involved in this? And, again, Virginians reject this kind of gutter politics. And this is not the first time, though, John, that I've unfortunately, been subjected to attacks in politics. As you know, there is a well-worn history, right, of folks who have come out and done things either publicly or privately to attack us. But we've always, John, when we've been attacked, we have been elevated. We've risen above it every single time. I ran for office for the first time in 2013. We launched that campaign in 2012. Every time people have come after us and lied or smeared or, thrown obstacles in our way, we've been elevated because we've gone to the people. We've gone to the 8.5 million Virginians, and said, look, what you see is what you get. And we're focused on you. We're not focused on the silly games of politics. And, something that, people may not appreciate is we've never gotten less than 48% of the vote in any statewide campaign, that we've run here in Virginia. In our primary in 13, we got a little over 48%. Got endorsed by the Washington Post. In 17, we got almost 50% of the vote in a three-way primary. And, of course, in the general, we got over 52% of the vote, and we're once again endorsed by the Washington Post against a sitting state senator who had a ton of resources. And we were attacked even in that race, but we won. So, Virginians see through all of this. They are very smart. And people who run these kind of smear campaigns and who, again, focus on the politics of personal destruction, who wake up every single day thinking, how can I take someone else down? I think they really insult the intelligence of Virginians. And what they also do is it all backfires. John, I'm a person of faith, and I believe very firmly, in the Bible and Genesis 50:20. What folks meant for evil, God will turn around for good. And we have seen that time and time again. That's frankly the story of my life, well before politics. And that's how we've arrived in the place where we are. And if you think back 221 years, who would have predicted that Simon Fairfax's great-great-great-grandson would be the number 2 in command of the same state where he had been enslaved? John, we are in a good place, and we're very proud of the work that we're doing in Virginia. It was a tie-breaking vote on Medicaid expansion in the Senate. So now 400,000 people have access to health insurance. 290,000 have already signed up. We did criminal justice reform, paid our teachers more, paid our law enforcement more. I come from a law enforcement family. Our economy is booming. We're number 1 on CNBC's ranking for best states to do business. We have a surplus, a AAA bond rating, and we're going to put nearly $1 billion in our rainy day fund. And we got Amazon HQ2 to locate here in Virginia. We're growing jobs, about 41,000 new jobs in the first year. Virginia is doing so well, and we're expanding the scope of opportunity. So in the face of that, people feel like they have to go in the gutter and find some other way to try to take you down. But we're going to keep telling our story. It's a powerful and positive story, and we're going to win.
Has any Democratic candidate in the cycle in 2019 asked you to campaign for them?
We have had people, reach out and ask, for our help and support and campaign with them, and we'll over the course of the coming months, find different ways to be helpful to people. But again, John, the bottom line is, I'm still traveling, around the state. We're still getting, a ton of invites to speak to groups of Virginians, large groups, small groups, and people are very excited about the message that we're bringing forth, and they're just not caught up in the silliness and the falsehoods that float around in these parlor games in these circles. They are focused on their families. They don't wake up every single day thinking, how can I tear my neighbor down? They wake up every day thinking, I got to get my kid off to school, want them to get a good education, I got to keep my job, hopefully get a raise, pay my mortgage, pay my rent, make sure we have health insurance and get the kids in summer camp. I mean, frankly, that's what happens in my household. And I've been having a lot of fun, taking my kids to various camps this summer and really enjoying time with our family. So again, that's what Virginians are focused on. That's what Virginians care about. And, and that's really what they want us to be focused on as well. And they're tired of the smear campaigns. They're done with it. They are done with it. And people, will do things that are very obvious, that they're politically motivated. They don't want to get to the truth. They just want to smear somebody's name. But, John, I inherited a name from Simon Fairfax, who 221 years ago maybe could never have envisioned this. And I'm going to pass down a name to my children and to their children, their grandchildren. Every Virginian feels the same way. So this is not about me as a person. I'll get through it. God has been with me from day one, and my family. Everybody's been so supportive. It's just been really amazing. So again, what they meant for evil, God has turned around for our good, and it's a bright new day in Virginia, and we're ready for the challenge.
Justin Fairfax running for governor 2021. Mr. Lieutenant Governor,
John,
no
I'll take
question
that as
about
an
it.
endorsement, and I appreciate you in advance. Thank you, and God bless you to all your listeners, and
thanks for
God
being
bless all
with us.
Virginians, and look forward to celebrating next week in Jamestown 400 years of an inspired history.
Thanks for standing up to these 2 caucuses and going to Jamestown. Thank you for doing that. John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. We'll be right back.